I spent much of the afternoon yesterday in Dunlap, Tennessee, in Sequatchie County, following up on the elections. The mayor of Dunlap is seeking re-election. His name is Dwain Land. He's a major property holder, major landlord and renter, and he has two challengers. One of whom has taken a position in favor of a couple, the Thomas and Kelly Gaddys, who are under an oppression by the city of Dunlap and its executive branch. Of course, the executive branch is the mayor. There is in that town a commission whose members largely are very deferential and somewhat spooked by reporters' questions about the hounding, the prosecution of in civil court of this couple. Now, what has the couple done? Have they done something criminal? Have they injured anybody? Have they committed a tort? Are they a threat to public morals? Are they a pending disaster for public safety? Or are they spreading the plague or other things of that kind that would be deemed a threat to public health? Now, those 3 points, health, morals, and welfare, are the pretended basis of the exercise of police power in Tennessee. Tennessee has police power, and that always has to be exercised with those things in view. And if there is to be an inspection of a house, let's say, or a property, there has to be a crime alleged or committed, not just by word of mouth, but by oath, and so you have police powers that can operate civilly if there is a threat to public morals, health, or safety, or if there is a criminal act that, of course, is a threat to public safety as well. And for it to be of criminal nature, for someone to be hounded, as the Gaddys have been hounded, there has to be the allegation under penalty of perjury, under oath, that a crime has been committed. However, in Dunlap, there is great confusion about the rights of the people and the authority of the city magistrate. That would be the chief executive of that branch, the executive branch, Mayor Land. Now, almost a couple years ago, he did a circumspection, an inspection around, right? Circum means around. And he did a circumspect inspection of the property owned by this couple in a bend in the creek, Coops Creek, which is rather high given the recent rainfalls, and said, that house is a threat to the public. It's dangerous. It's in peril of falling over. And I demand an inspection. So what he did was he sort of he conflated, if you will, he put together these jurisdictions, criminal and civil, and began litigation to have the property inspected. And which is really, it's really a search. What he wants is a search. He wants permission for a search, which can only be warranted under an oath of a criminal act, or evidence of a criminal act, or fruits of a crime, or indications of a crime having been committed, or a dead body, right? Those are all things that would allow a property to be inspected and or searched. So he wants an inspection, but he says he wants an inspection, but what he's really asking for is a search. And he's doing it through the civil process of litigation. And the couple, Thomas and Carol Gaddy, they're saying no. Now, these are people who know how to spell, right? In the David Tulis Nooga Radio lexicon, people need to get their spelling correct. Now, a lot of people, it's a word. It's a very short word. It does not have 15 letters. It has or 20. It has 2, and the letters are a consonant, the letter N, and a vowel, the letter O. Most people get the word spelled wrong. They say O-N, meaning on, as in get on, comply, get along, just do what you're supposed to do, etc. Right? The compliant American syndrome has a spelling problem as well, and it says O-N. Now, the Gaddys are genuine Americans of courageous spirit, and they spell the word N-O. They refuse to give consent, and they will not be bullied, and they will not be bunked into consent, even though now they are fugitives. And this is a remarkable story this elderly couple. He is 71, she is 69. He's quiet spoken, sort of a builder type with a white hair on his face. And Carol Gaddy is a very, very vigorous Christian, outspoken Christian. And her problem is that she's an Americanist. Now, an Americanist is someone who believes in the Constitution and she thinks that American soldiers fought foreign wars to defend it. Okay, so that's an Americanist. So it's kind of a conservative, pro-government, pro-nation, pro-Constitution perspective. I mean, she's a patriot. Okay, you call her a patriot. She is a patriot, and she's saying, she's got her spelling correct, and she's saying no, N-O, you're not coming on my land. I don't care. You have to have a warrant. Okay, she's saying you have to have a warrant. Meanwhile, the city government, Mayor Dwain Land, this is David Tulis. I'm sorry, I had to turn my mic off just for a second. The phone rang, and we have on the phone Carol Gaddy. Carol, I'm just introducing your story here. There are elections in Dunlap on Saturday. There's been some early voting, and I was in Dunlap yesterday reporting on that, meeting people. I made a special effort to meet some of the tenants of Mayor of Dwain Land's properties. He runs has many properties for rent, trailer homes, trailer parks. There were 2 of them I visited, and I went by your house. No one was there. Where are you, Carol? Where are you now?
Well, because of our health situation, not only this 2.5 years of stress emotionally has taken a toll on us, but then having the physical attacks that occurred to both to my husband Thomas by a Sequatchie County deputy one night after dark, after he cut our gate, and then the attack on me, we thought we needed to take a little extended vacation for rest. Well, and also for our safety, that even though our son went to court, he was thrown out of the courtroom, which is against the law, by Judge Graham's deputies that he had there. I mean, during court proceeding, anybody should be able to sit in that courtroom and ask what's happening. But
well, Carol? Let my listener who's not been following your story wants to know, why are you a fugitive? In a nutshell, where are you now? Are you in a public place? Are you available to come and go as you please? What is your situation? Are you under some kind of arrest warrant?
Well, there were warrants, yes. This Judge Graham, who should have been removed from our case, he shouldn't even be with conflict of interest. In January of this year, we filed a federal lawsuit in federal court in Chattanooga against these 3 judges, these 3 lawyers. When they're using the courts as their higher level bully tool to bully people and think that they are going to force their way inside of our private home to take photographs and walk all over our Tennessee constitutional rights and our constitutional rights as a citizen in this country. And that's basically what they're doing through the court. Now, this election that's coming up, we are praying that somehow other people in Dunlap that know what's going on over there, know the truth of these, I call them criminals now, that are running that city. The election process is corrupt. Of course, the mayor had a full-page ad rerunning for office a 3rd time. He has so corrupted city government. And there is a board of commissioners that should be the separation of powers. It takes 3 votes to pass ordinance. And since Dwain Land has been mayor, he calls special meetings, gets 2 commissioners that he can control, then he himself casts a 3rd vote. And he's the executive officer. See, that is a violation of the separation of powers under both constitutions, national and state. But there are other people in Dunlap that knows this is going on. And yet they're afraid or fearful of standing against it.
Well,
And of course, we're
Carol,
standing for our private property rights.
Well, let me interrupt you, Carol.
Here.
This is David Tulis. We're here at Nooga Radio, 92.7 FM and AM 1240 Nooga Radio, and we're talking with Carol Gaddy. She and her husband you're not really saying this, but you are a fugitive. Is that correct, Carol? You're a fugitive in defense of property rights?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Our son is every day checking
Let's not
on
use
our
euphemisms.
and on our house and cutting the grass. And what the listeners really need to know is this has been a 10-year ongoing, 10-year plus harassment of us and our property by the city of Dunlap.
Well, it's actually been just 2 years, Carol, when Mayor Dwain Land filed his affidavit saying that this property was a danger to public health and is liable to injure people even off of beyond the property line, he said. I mean, that was just under 2 years ago. I think February 2015.
Yes, that is when the court case started. In other words, over these years, they have stepped up their harassments of we and our property, and wanting us gone.
Well, what do they want, Carol? What do they want with your property? What do they have against you? What is your problem? What is their problem?
Well, they've never said. We've tried every way we can in these court filings to find out, what is all I could ever get from the beginning was a man named Chad Reese that works in Chattanooga with the Southeast Tennessee Development, which is one of those little tax-eating ABC unconstitutional organizations where these people hold secret meetings and say, well, this property needs to be used for this and that all over Tennessee. I wish they'd do away with these ABC operations like Southeast Tennessee Development because they're so corrupting of private property rights. In other words, when a state employee decides, well, I'm going to decide what all these people's private property needs to be used for. Well, our property has been a residence, a family home, and it's going to remain our family home because we've taken this stand to protect our property. And the fact that the mayor and of course his city attorney lies, Stephen Greer, I mean, they keep making up new stories concerning our property. We are approved by the federal government through HUD, and I have this in writing. It's in this, our trade skills for construction goes all the way back to the early 80s. And we are certainly qualified, state and federal, to remodel our own home without being harassed by the city. And the mayor, who has never worked, he inherited, he and his brother, 300 dumpy trailers in the city and county over there that he collects rents from. And when people are falling through the floors in those trailers and tell him about it, he threatens them to pay up the rent anyway.
This is David Tulis, and we're talking with Carol Gaddy. And Carol, let me just say,
enforcement part of Dunlap only mentions inspections of trailers. Now, I had several people that reminded me of that, and I said, yes, I'm aware of that. There is nothing in any legality of Dunlap that states that they have the right to come into private houses, and do inspections. But it does mention that those trailers should be being inspected, but they don't do that because their so-called building inspector, Bill Dennis, is simply the pawn of the mayor. And when I spoke with one of the newer city commissioners, he was told by another attorney there, who is also a commissioner, a city commissioner, that the mayor can do anything he wants to do under his executive authority power.
Well, mayors are, by definition, Carol Gaddy, executives, and one problem that I've pointed out in this case is that the city charter requires all disputes to be heard by the city court, which is a corporation court. But that wasn't done. So it seems to me that the thing being in chancery from the beginning is in the wrong venue. and that Chancery has, under the laws of the city, the private law of the city, Chancery has no jurisdiction. Mr. Greer, the attorney, indicated, well, that's at our discretion. But it seems to me that if the charter, and if your client is the city, and the charter, and that body's governing charter from the legislature says all cases shall be heard by the city court, that the venue's wrong, and that for them to, and for the city to persist in that jurisdiction is really, I'd say, possibly a violation of the Tennessee oppression statute. Because they're knowingly doing this, and they're not following the proper procedure. And well, let me ask you this: is there a criminal warrant for the searching of your house? Has any criminal thing been alleged by you and your husband Thomas, Carol Gaddy? Any crimes?
No. In other words, they've used the word inspection to make their actions seem more legitimate. And back when that started, it was in the first year of this case. As a matter of fact, it was they filed the lawsuit in Chancery Court in February of 2015, and then in October the 29th, we had a motion up timely, and it was shoved aside by that judge at that time because Stephen Greer filed a motion to be heard untimely 9 days before the hearing, and the hearing had been set since August at the docket call. And that's where Stephen Greer said that they wanted to inspect the inside of our home with video cameras and film. And that's where we determined that we've been in construction industry.
Carol, I need to move on. Let me ask you a question.
Of that. What Carol, I'm trying to tell you is that is not an inspection. That is a search. Okay, why do they want to come in my home and take photographs? And in whose hands would those photographs end up? Remember when I said that Judge Graham has a real problem with this because he's the judge. In other words, when these people supposedly stated, without a letter, without a phone call, when my husband and I were out of town, that they did an inspection from our fence line. Well, our fence line was cut at that time. They stole a winch off the work truck. Well, some weeks after that, a team of 5 people, and the only reason I knew those people's names and knew they were all from Dunlap is because a very good Bledsoe deputy caught those people with my silver still in their car. In other words, everything of value was robbed in my home. It was classified as an aggravated burglary. I contacted the DA, Stephen Strain, and told him that we wanted to watch what happens to these people in court, and I wanted restitution put in that case. All my jewelry, everything was just wiped out. And all 5 people are residents of Dunlap that did this. Well, the judge that sat on that case was Judge Graham, Thomas Graham, the same one that is now taking warrants out for our arrest.
And the charges that you're facing, Carol,
let those people go with a slap on the wrist, probation.
This is David Tulis. We're talking with Carol Gaddy. Listen quickly, Carol. There are 2 candidates. One candidate is challenging Mayor Dwain Land, is Jennifer Lockhart Greer. She has said very sympathetic things to you. She says, "I do know that private property rights are the cornerstone of our democratic republic, and each and every citizen should be safe and protected from governmental abuse of power." And she says in an interview with me that she's praying for both of you. And the other candidate is Rhonda Summer, who said that she couldn't talk with me about your case until she talked with an attorney. Well, that's the person who doesn't seem like they need to understand this is not just a legal matter; it's a political matter. And Mayor Dwain Land is seeking re-election in spite of he seems to have a good name among his renters, and he's doing that against you in spite of the good record he seems to have on that other side. It seems to be he's called a Christian by one of his renters, but this seems in a way to be a very unchristian approach to a neighbor. That would be you and your husband, Thomas.
Oh, yeah. Anyone that does not live by the word of the King James Bible and its instructions on how you conduct your life and how you treat your neighbor is not a Christian. But now Jennifer would make a great mayor. I hope people are listening to this and they hear that endorsement of her. I talked with her to some length when I was running for a city commission seat in 2009, which was the same year that Dwain Land went in for the first time as mayor, and Jennifer Lockhart Greer was running, opposing him, she would have been a great mayor.
This is David Tulis, and we're talking with Carol Gaddy. Carol, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate your time, Carol.
Okay.
Carol Gaddy is endorsing for mayor Jennifer Lockhart Greer, saying she's a defender of constitutional rights, would make a great mayor. She is challenging Dwain Land, the incumbent, whose department has been hounding for 2 years now through the courts this innocent couple who's not been accused of any crime, and yet an inspection/search is demanded.
Fox News Talk 1240.
Nooga Radio AM 1240 and 92.7 FM News Now. Christopher Wilson and Patricia DeSalvo have been arrested in East Ridge after a search of Mr. Wilson's home, which he consented to, revealed methamphetamine and pipes for smoking it and $14,000 in cash. Ms. DeSalvo was arrested after methamphetamine was found on her person, according to the police, which violates her probation. A man wanted in connection with a first-degree murder in Polk County has been arrested in Bradley County. Daniel Stinnett, who's 49, arrested at a house on Corwin Road, and the police say they found a weapon they believe is the murder weapon. Stinnett will be transferred from Bradley County to Polk County. Police say Eric Spangler burglarized 2 homes on 2 different occasions back in 2016 and managed to pawn the items from the thefts within 90 minutes of having stolen them. A new surveillance video is how the police caught him. The police say he appears in a pawn surveillance video pawning the items stolen. Trinity Quinn went missing from Ray County on Tuesday at 7 a.m. The police say she may be with Daniel Clark, who's wanted in connection with a murder in Nashville. If it's going on in the Tennessee Valley, it's going on. Nooga Radio AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world. Fox News Talk 1240.
After the school start, expect warmer weather for your Wednesday with lots of sunshine. Very nice highs, lower 80s. Tonight, more clouds, much milder lows, 58 to 60. Breezy with scattered showers and storms Thursday, highs 68 to 70. Much cooler highs into the 50s with lingering showers Friday. Bring life back to your lawn and garden with Glass Farm Nursery, featuring lots of color, from flats and hang baskets to shrubs and trees. Open daily, closed Sundays. Glass Farm, Highway 11, 4 miles south of Trenton. And I'm Sports Team 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Core. On Nooga Radio AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
It is Eric Jones hard into the outside wall, and they are still 3 and 4 wide. It looks like we're racing at Talladega.
Caution flag is out. It looked like Denny Hamlin was trying to get by Ricky Stenhouse. Got into the back of Ricky at the line. Man, that's a close one. Matt Kenseth wins stage 1.
Green checkered flag is out, and Brad Keselowski has won stage 2.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. into the wall. That will bring out the caution. Caution waving once again. And again, it's Dale Earnhardt Jr. involved.
Oh, trouble. Ty Dillon has gotten turned to the inside of the racetrack, and Clint Boyer has just nailed him.
Matt Kenseth falling back, the field storming by. Something wrong. Now we see sparks from Kenseth's Toyota.
Larson chucks him off. Coming off turn number 2. Nose to tail. Now it's Logano to the high side in 3.
Joey Logano, a winner here at the Richmond International Raceway.
Hear it live on Chattanooga's official NASCAR radio station.
Fox News Talk 1240.
The voice of NASCAR.
Need a tiller to get things going for the spring? Spiff up your porch, maybe your deck? Come on by and get a pressure washer at Action Rental. Family in town, need some tables and chairs for an event? Come on by and see us. Action Rental. This is Dan at Action Rental on Lee Highway. Come by and see me. Action Rentals.
I've been a customer at SNS 14 years. It's way out of my way, but I'm well treated. I believe what I'm told. Price is reasonable. David Tulis here. Make an SNS appointment today. This week, get $50 off any 30,000-mile service or timing belt repair. And get a free combat knife as a gift. SNS Auto Repair specializes in Toyota, Lexus, Honda, Acura, Scion, Nissan, and Infiniti. 6-time winner of Best of the Best award in the Times Free Press. 855-3436. ssautorepair.net. 855-3436.
Final expenses, funeral cost, cemetery lots, unpaid medical bills, probate cost, debts. Debts are due and payable upon death of debtor. Will these costs produce a burden and hardship on your loved ones? Who will be responsible? How will they handle them? These costs can total many thousands of dollars, only compounded greater with the grief of losing a family member. A safe and secure way to provide for these costs is with an affordable life insurance from Covenant Group Insurance and Financial Services. Covenant Group is a local company with local agents. Covenant Group still makes house calls. Covenant Group only represents A-rated companies. With many options to offer, Covenant Group can accommodate almost any budget. Great discounts for good health and plans available for impaired risk. Call today for a free, no-obligation consultation in the convenience of your home. Call Steve or Jada at 423-855-8484. Call today, 423-855-8484.
I've got a $10 bill for you at the best paint store in Chattanooga. David here. Big savings in exterior stains. Chattanooga Paint and Decorating. More than a paint store. Bring up $100 on your next upgrade. Plunk down just $90. Save on all outdoor stains in stock at Chattanooga Paint and Decorating. Prolix Sickens. Benjamin Moore, Flood, Sanson, Richards. 10% off through May 13. Jim and his team are here to help and advise and to help you hold on to your money. 5529 Hickson Pike. Chattanooga Paint and Decorating. ChattanoogaPaint.com.
I have the best steak selection in town. Name of the business is Don's Meat Shop, and I'm Donnie Raines. Just ask for Donnie. I make over 20 different types of sausages. Most of them are great for grilling. We have the best selection, best quality. We have the hard-to-find items. Don's Meat Shop.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
This is David Tulis, and we are here at AM 1240 and FM 92.7 Nooga Radio, where we argue for localism. We have the vain and wonderfully weak idea that somehow Chattanooga is the center of the universe and that we need to start thinking about reform and rebuilding. You might even say reconstruction in terms of what's happening here and who the people are here and how national problems are creating insoluble national crises, and even crises here that can't be solved by anybody but us. We have to somehow get out from under these many man-caused, government-caused problems. We argue that you should love your neighbor and buy local. Near is better than far. Small is better than big, and simple than complex. And the good people fight us at every point, even in the footnotes. And there, too, in 5-point type, we argue that personal is better than corporate and physical than abstract. David Dayen is a journalist in Los Angeles, has been one for 13 years, and he's a reporter for The Intercept, which is a major investigative platform that makes enemies on all sides. It makes enemies of the right. It makes enemies of the left. And it has, in many regards, a kind of free market perspective, though David does not, his credentials are not strictly in that category in the libertarian way. He is a writer also for the left-wing magazine Nation, and writes also for other publications, Fiscal Times, and elsewhere. Now, before him, this past week has been a major report that he's published, that the Intercept has published, and it's about Governor Bill Haslam. And the headline is about how his corporate buddies are working with him to privatize government jobs. David Dayen, what is your report about? And in a nutshell, why should my listener care what Governor Haslam does with people who work in government buildings to keep them in good shape? What's the story?
Right. So the governor, through the Office of Customer-Focused Government, signed a 5-year deal with one company, Jones Lang LaSalle, or JLL, to privatize the operations and maintenance of all government buildings. And that includes campus buildings. That's about 2/3 of government buildings in the state of Tennessee. This is a very unique deal. In most cases, if a state wanted to outsource services, they would write up what they wanted done in terms of the terms of the contract. They would come up with a menu of what actually would be accomplished, and then they would send it out for bidding, and there would be a competitive bidding process, and then coming back, they would pick the one that met their needs. In this case, in a process described as vested outsourcing, JLL, along with other potential contractors, sat down at the table and actually wrote the contract, helped write the contract with the government. So, and then bid on the contract that they had a hand in writing, which is extremely unusual, and really, brings up all sorts of potential conflicts of interest. This JLL is a company who was contracted by the state to recommend whether or not to outsource, and then is bidding on the contract. So it's an interesting deal. The campuses would have the ability to opt in to the contract, as well as any other government building. But there is a lot of pressure being placed by the governor and the state to make sure that happens. I guess that the governor recently changed the entire governing structure of four-year colleges like the University of Memphis and some other four-year colleges and universities that get public money in the state, and replaced the entire board with appointments of his own. So I would argue it's probably likely that those various entities will opt into the contract. My view is that the public pays for this service through tax revenue. There's really only two ways to do it. You do it where you deliver the service in-house, or you deliver the service through a private operator that needs to acquire some layer of profit in order to make it worth their while. And so the idea that the corporate provider says is that they can provide this service at a cheaper cost through efficiency because private enterprise is more efficient than the government. Studies have not really shown that to be the case. In fact, the state legislative plaza is one of the 10% of government buildings that Jones Lang LaSalle already operates the operations and maintenance on. And what they have found in the legislature is that the way that they're accomplishing their goals is through degraded quality of service. It's difficult to get a light bulb changed in the legislative plaza in Nashville. So I think that considering this isn't just about state-run agency buildings, this is about campuses, this is about places where you send your children. I think as a taxpayer, you have the right to assume that you're getting the best possible quality and you're not handing over those decisions to a private company that is interested in taking off their profit and doing so in a way that either hurts the workers in that particular facility or hurts the quality of service, which then hurts everyone who uses the facility, which includes the taxpayers of the state of Tennessee.
Well,
so my view is that this is a highly unusual deal that the state wants to use as a model for the nation. And that should raise some red flags. And in fact, the state legislature, over half of them have signed a letter to go to the Office of Customer Focused Government to say, let's slow down until we understand the economic impact of privatizing operations and maintenance on all of these state buildings. And as you know, Tennessee is a state that the legislature is 77% Republican, the same party as the governor, and even half of that body is saying, slow down, let's figure this out. And that's not all Democrats, that's not all Republicans. That's a bipartisan coalition that is rejecting and resisting this very bold experiment by the governor on the public buildings in the state and the workers in the state and the citizens of the state. So that's my view of why the listener should really be interested in this issue.
Well, I appreciate your thinking about the listener's interest. He would say, in following further on what you're saying, he would say, well, to me, it doesn't really matter who provides this government services. Government services are generally bad all around. So it really doesn't matter whether it's the man who's talking with me or the woman behind the desk is on the state payroll or on a corporate payroll.
I think it matters to the 10,000 workers affected, and that's 10,000 families, and they all have mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers, and those are people that live and work in the state of Tennessee that are your neighbors. And, the possibility exists for them to get a pretty raw deal out of this. Number one. Number two, the funders, essentially the bosses, if you want to call it that, of these individuals are the taxpayers of the state of Tennessee. And I think the taxpayers of the state of Tennessee deserve to have the money that they pay to go to operate these buildings, which they inevitably might have to use, that doesn't go into a corporate cofer, that doesn't go into a corporate treasury, but it goes to deliver the best quality of service at the best price.
So there is somewhat in your
indications that I have is that JLL is a little more concerned with how much profit they can skim than delivering that quality.
Is JLL publicly traded or private business?
I believe that's a private company. Although it may be publicly traded. One interesting sidelight to this is that Governor Haslam had a substantial investment in JLL before he entered office. He put that investment into a blind trust upon entering office, so he cannot say whether or not he still holds that investment and whether or not he's still, steering this business to a company that might benefit him financially. But it's an interesting kind of question. The fact that JLL also receives other significant contracts from the state for consulting. They advised the decommissioning of several state buildings and leasing new office space at JLL facilities, which earned them millions and millions of dollars. There does seem to be a symbiotic relationship between the government of the state of Tennessee and JLL, which just sort of adds on to this whole circumstance.
Well, I think the argument that people make who defend this sort of procedure would be something like this. David Dayen, the reporter for The Intercept, and it would run something like this. Corporations have the profit motive, which forces the operation to drive down costs. And in driving down costs, it reduces expenses theoretically to the taxpayer. And the company can make its profit and keep costs lower for the state and theoretically the taxpayers. Is that true?
That's certainly the normal theory. Interestingly, the theory that JLL has used in winning this contract, they have given the reason why they're going to save money. And they really talked about economies of scale. They talked about the fact that they could do bulk purchasing if everybody opts in, that they could do bulk purchasing on materials and supplies and make sure that it would be cost effective. Now, my question when I heard that was, why can't the state of Tennessee do that? The state of Tennessee already does operations and maintenance on all these buildings. They're a very big purchaser. It doesn't seem to me like there's some sort of advantage there from a private sector company using economies of scale versus the state of Tennessee using economies of scale. And if that is JLL's main rationale, then I have to question this efficiency argument because it seems to be no different than the efficiency that the state itself could get if they didn't lease out this activity. Now your argument is, and the argument of many people who advocate for this, is that the profit motive is a driver of this conduct. Well, the question then becomes, is the current attitude, the current system where it's publicly administered, is that deficient in some way or another? And I can tell you from the attitudes of students and faculty at these campus buildings who are demonstrating on behalf of the facilities maintenance people at those various campuses that they don't necessarily see a problem. In fact, at University of Tennessee, Knoxville, which is striving to become one of the top 25 research universities in the country, they have actually insourced a lot of these operations over the past several years. The management there finds it that it's beneficial to take some of those activities in-house, and they've been lauded for it on campus. Now, you would assume there would be a lot more indifference to who provided that particular service if the service was mediocre or substandard. It does, to me, seem like something that isn't broke, so why do you have to fix it?
This is David Tulis, and we're talking with David Dayen, who is a reporter for The Intercept. We're speaking to him from Los Angeles. He's 13 years a journalist, and he's 44 years old, has written for The Nation, The Fiscal Times, and other publications, and has just come out on The Intercept with a story, the headline of which is Tennessee's billionaire governor works with his corporate buddies to privatize government jobs. And we're just trying to find out more about what his argument is and why this is important. So again, David, your argument is that, let me ask you this, does your argument include the assertion that there's somehow a violation of the public trust for the government, the state of Tennessee, to have a corporate partner and to offload jobs and assignments to that corporate partner? Is there somehow?
I think potentially there is, if it falls into the category of unjust enrichment. Interestingly enough, the whole concept of this idea that you sit down at the table with the contractor and then have them bid on the contract they help write, was put together by this guy named Mike Ledyard, who was an adjunct professor at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville's business school, then became a consultant for this government agency. He's known as the Director of Facilities Management Outsourcing at the Office of Customer Focused Government, and he's the highest paid employee in Tennessee government. And in fact, the consultants who are specializing in outsourcing have been paid $612,000 a year by the state of Tennessee. That's taxpayer dollars. So there seems to be a lot of money sloshing around to facilitate this outsourcing, and to me that does raise questions of the public trust. Why is this speeding along on a fast track? Why was the contract signed early? And according to some news reports in locally there in Tennessee, why were campuses given a very short amount of time to decide whether or not to opt in or not? There just seems to be a lot of questions hanging over this, and that is reinforced by the fact that the legislature also is calling on slowing this down and trying to figure out just what the impact would be.
Well, I think one problem of having corporations buy up parts of government is this, that the profit motive dehumanizes the people who work for the government, but also more importantly, who dehumanize the people who become subject to the government. Say in the prison system, where you have, for example, telephone providers that skim great riches in the end off of every phone call made by some poor broken down inmate to his poor broken down wife who has 3 jobs and 2 children.
Right.
And he has to come in
and
pay.
I think that's accurate. And the question is turning over this decision making of the public commons, which we all share, right? I mean, we all have a share of this in terms of ownership, whether it's a road or a bridge or a piece of infrastructure like a prison or a campus building. We helped build all that through our tax dollars, and we're now having the decision-making of how to manage that particular service taken away from us. I mean, right there in Chattanooga, you understand the value of public infrastructure that we all own and all share in through the high-speed internet service in the city of Chattanooga, which has really revitalized that city and is very unique. It's unlike most other places, in part because there are laws in certain states that disallow the practice of public municipal broadband. So I think that in Chattanooga you're sort of uniquely attuned to this idea that if you keep that decision-making process within the citizenry, that you can reach better outcomes. And if you take that away and give that to an operator that is a for-profit operator that is motivated by their profit margin, that could reach bad outcomes.
David Dayen, I want to thank you very much for joining my listener and me here at Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and FM 92.7.
Absolutely. Thank you so
joining.
much.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We've been talking with David Dayen, who's a writer for The Intercept. And one thing that you'll notice in his conversation with me is that there's a link between the people and the state. And he wants to keep that, in his analysis, that is a vibrant and real link. The state represents us. It is our servant. It looks out for our interests. Its properties are our properties. its buildings are our buildings. That is legally there may be something to that, because I'm the one, after all, who makes reference to the people's right of way, right? The public's right of way on the highway. And I've made a very unpopular argument that there is a right to travel by car or truck absent any claim by the state against the user of the road, right? The innocent private user of the road, I suggest in various forums, is a right that cannot be trammeled by the commercial interests of the state. David Dayen, who has a kind of leftist progressive perspective, believes there is a kind of a link between the state and the people that is genuine. It's a kind of religious link, and so there is a certain holiness that needs to be protected. And he is offended by Governor Haslam's engagement of Jones Lang LaSalle JLL to run maintenance and repair work and groundskeeping for these buildings, these many thousands of buildings or hundreds of buildings owned by the state. However, I'd like to suggest the following: that if we believe in the free market and local economy, that link is really a myth. That link does not exist. It is a creation of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the French philosopher who had the idea of the public will, the collective will. And how the state, the committee, if you will, represents us, is a kind of a body better than us. It is us, but it's better than us, and it is above us. That is a fiction that has lasted since the mid 1700s, and it's now in its death throes. There is no link. It is simply the state is not us. It is it. Okay, we are here, and it is there. It does not represent us. It does not belong to us. It is an alien. You might say an alien threat to local economy, the free market, to the family. It is a threat to prosperity. And as we hear today on the National Day of Prayer, we think about what to pray for. The state is a judgment. It is full of the wrath of God, decapitalizing, dehumanizing the people. And we should be concerned about Governor Haslam nonetheless.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
iBuyChattanoogaHouses.com, Chattanooga's premier house buyer. Do you have a house you need to sell fast? We are buying. Call us today. We are local folks. We will buy your house as is, no repairs needed. We will give you a cash offer and close on the day of your choice. Call us right now, 423-834-7321. Need to sell a house fast? We are buying. Are you experiencing one of these situations? Inherited a house you have no need for? Behind on your property taxes? Nightmare tenants making your life miserable? Too many repairs needed and don't have a desire to fix? Behind on payments and facing foreclosure? Recently divorced and need a way out of the house? Never really wanted to be a landlord and just want to cash out? Trying to relocate and need to sell your house? Do you need to sell a house fast? We are buying. No fees, no hassles, no repair cost. Close on the day of your choice. Our process is simple. Call us today. We inspect your property right away. We make you a fair cash offer. We close on the day of your choice. Call us today, 423-834-7321. Visit our website, iBuyChattanoogaHouses.com. Call us today, 423-834-7321. iBuyChattanoogaHouses.com.
Need windows? Hey folks, do you need new windows? Good news. Window Depot of Chattanooga has a great special going on right now. 10 high-quality, energy-efficient double-hung vinyl windows installed for only $29.90. That's right, 10 double-hung vinyl windows, only $2,990. And yes, they qualify for the TVA rebates. Call 894-0011. Window Depot of Chattanooga today, located at 5950 Shalford Road. Call 894-0011 today.
Here comes the bride, here comes the bride. She's walking down the street.
And she's wearing a stunning diamond ring that's a fraction of the cost that her man would have paid at one of those overpriced mall jewelry stores. Rick Davis has a plethora on quality diamonds and gold rings, and he wants to pass the savings on to you. Did I say plethora? How about overabundance? That's right, an overabundance of gold and diamonds. So before you decide to get crazy and pay full retail on an overpriced piece of jewelry from one of those cookie-cutter mall jewelry stores, come on out and see Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds. Top quality gold and diamonds at a fraction of the cost. Intermarital bliss with an engagement and wedding ring from Rick Davis. Hey, he'll also buy your gold and diamonds with cash, and more cash. Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds, Brainerd Road, Chattanooga. And there goes another happy bride.
Simple cremation for $895. Why spend more? ChattanoogaCremationCenter.com. ChattanoogaCremationCenter.com. Value you want, service you trust. $895. ChattanoogaCremationCenter.com.
Are you shovel ready to build a house, but you're not a builder? Are you shovel ready? Michael's Homes is ready to bulldoze its way to a solution for you. You have ideas on what you want in a house, but you're looking for someone to bring your ideas into a plan and turn your plan into a house. Michael's Homes, custom builder. Michael's Homes has lots available at a new subdivision, River Bay Estates, that's Harrison. Maybe River Watch in Saudi Daisy. Choices galore, lots, houses, beautiful homes all over Chattanooga. The Canyons, Hickson. Crystal Brook, Appison. Drive in, take a look, consult with us. We build on your lot or ours. Homes-Chattanooga.com.
Call 423-413-9929.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Get back there, you dang Yankee! Great horny toads, I'm up north. Gotta burn my boots, they touched Yankee soil. Lay down your arms and step forward, Yankee!
What's the hassle, Schmassel?
My orders from General Lee is to hold the Macy-Dixie line, and no Yankees are crossing it.
If the South would have won, we'd have had it made. I'd probably run for president of the Southern state. The day Elvis passed away would be our national holiday. If the South would have won, we'd have had it made.
NASCAR, David Tulis, Coast to Coast AM, and CBS Radio News. Chattanooga's news, talk, and sports leader.
WBLZ HD4 Ottawa, W224AZ Chattanooga,
WSDT Saudi Daisy Chattanooga.
CBS News, I'm Frank Seditani. FBI Director James Comey is about to testify publicly to the Senate Judiciary Committee. CBS's Jeff Pegues tells us the committee wants to know what Comey knows about Russia, people close to the president, and attempts to influence the presidential election.
He will be pressed on the FBI counterintelligence investigation into Russian interference and whether Trump campaign officials were coordinating with the Russians.
Comey's likely to say he can't comment because the investigation's ongoing. But a former top Justice Department official could be much more eager to speak out.
We've heard from multiple congressional sources and law enforcement sources and intelligence sources that Sally Yates is a key figure in this investigation, in that she notified the White House that she felt that Mike Flynn, the president's former national security advisor, was compromised.
President Trump invited two House Republicans who oppose the Republican health care bill to the White House for a chat. One, Michigan's Fred Upton, is offering an amendment that would address concerns about coverage for pre-existing conditions.
The White House believes by the end of today, Congressman Upton and quite probably Billy Long of Missouri will go from no to yes. They also believe they'll bring a few votes with them in the process.
CBS's Major Garrett tells us Republican leaders need every last vote in order to pass the bill. These are desperate hours in Eureka, Missouri, where the rain-swollen Merrimack River is rising toward a record crest and more rain is forecast. A furious sandbagging effort is underway.
This is our community. I live in Eureka. I've been out here since I was 13 years old. I know a lot of these people. We want to keep this community up and running.
Other river towns are also facing serious flooding this week. Two former employees are accusing Sallyport Global, a big military security firm, of giving a wink and a nod to smuggling, theft, lax security, and sex trafficking involving fellow workers at an Iraqi airbase.
There were accusations of prostitution, of human trafficking, of sex trafficking.
females brought in from other locations in Baghdad that came from other countries.
Christy King says she and a second investigator were fired for blowing the whistle. The company says it takes allegations of wrongdoing seriously. The House has voted to give workers the option of compensatory time off instead of overtime pay. It's not clear whether the Senate will take up the bill. A private survey shows businesses added 177,000 jobs in April. Louis Alexander is the chief economist at Nomura Securities.
This is an economy that continues to grow at a kind of healthy pace. That is consistent with growth that's probably above trend.
Tearful relatives of Afghan civilians killed or wounded by a suicide bombing in the heart of Kabul gathered outside a hospital in the capital. The bombing killed 8 people. 3 American service members were wounded. The Dow Industrials are down 35 points. This is CBS News.
Goldman Sachs calls it the new gasoline. MIT and Forbes call it the Holy Grail. Locals call it Oro Blanco, which translated means white gold. What does this OBL superfuel mean to investors? It means the time is now to find out how you can capitalize on this new discovery. This year it was announced OBL will become the fuel of the International Space Station, and it won't need a refill until at least 2024. OBL is also in the early stages of being integrated into the U.S. electrical grid. The average automobile will be able to drive coast to coast 7 times with one fueling. This is not a joke. This is absolutely real. And this superfuel could also make the United States dream of complete energy independence a reality. Find out how you can capitalize on this new energy revolution when you visit oblsuperfuel.com or call 800-642-9454 to get a free pass to a webinar on how to invest in OBL. Visit oblsuperfuel.com or call 800-642-9454 and leave an email address to get a free pass to this investment webinar. oblsuperfuel.com.
Brought to you by Money Map Press.
A study out today questions the perceived benefits of eating a gluten-free diet. CBS's Bill Rakoff has the story.
Gluten-free products have exploded in popularity among consumers, but the Columbia University Mass General Harvard Medical School study says such a diet isn't doing much for non-celiacs.
There don't appear to be benefits from being gluten-free.
In fact, Columbia's Dr. Benjamin Lebwall says,
if going on a low-gluten or gluten-free diet results in decreased consumption of whole grains, this can be bad for the heart.
The study appears in the British Medical Journal. Bill Rakoff, CBS News.
The shiny hooves are all that's left of a carousel horse sculpture that stood proudly outside the First State Bank in Meridian, Mississippi. Police say the rest of it was smashed to bits the other night by a careless driver. They're looking for a black BMW with body damage. The life-size sculpture was one of dozens scattered around the city. Frank Sedapani, CBS News.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Nooga Radio AM 1240 and 92.7 FM News Now. Christopher Wilson and Patricia DeSalvo have been arrested in East Ridge after a search of Mr. Wilson's home, which he consented to, revealed methamphetamine and pipes for smoking it and $14,000 in cash. Ms. DeSalvo was arrested after methamphetamine was found on her person, according to the police, which violates her probation. A man wanted in connection with a first-degree murder in Polk County has been arrested in Bradley County. Daniel Stinnett, who's 49, arrested at a house on Corwin Road, and the police say they found a weapon they believe is the murder weapon. Stinnett will be transferred from Bradley County to Polk County. Police say Eric Spangler burglarized 2 homes on 2 different occasions back in 2016 and managed to pawn the items from the thefts within 90 minutes of having stolen them. A new surveillance video is how the police caught him. The police say he appears in a pawn surveillance video pawning the items stolen. Trinity Quinn went missing from Ray County on Tuesday at 7 a.m. The police say she may be with Daniel Clark, who's wanted in connection with a murder in Nashville. If it's going on in the Tennessee Valley, it's going on. Nooga Radio AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
After this cool start, expect warmer weather for your Wednesday with lots of sunshine. Very nice highs, lower 80s. Tonight, more clouds, much milder lows, 58 to 60. Breezy with scattered showers and storms Thursday, highs 68 to 70. Much cooler highs into the 50s with lingering showers Friday. Bring life back to your lawn and garden with Glass Farm Nursery, featuring lots of color, from flats and hang baskets to shrubs and trees. Open daily, closed Sundays. Glass Farm Highway 11, 4 miles south of Trenton. And I'm Sports Team 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Core.
On Nooga Radio AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. Live from Chattanooga, Tennessee, it's David Tulis.
A couple of minutes ago, did you get the Amber Alert for Trinity Faith Quinn? It passed across my screen a few minutes ago. She is 15 years old, and she was last seen in a surveillance video taken by a camera at an Exxon gas station in Nashville on Charlotte Pike. And at that gas station, there was a noisy confrontation, a gunshot, and lying dead a clerk. And the man with whom Trinity Faith Quinn had departed is wanted in that killing. So the Amber Alert suggests is given not because she's a runaway, but because she is someone under the authority and power, an illicit power of another, and therefore something like a kidnapping victim. And so the authorities decided to pass that alert to you, my listener here at the David Tulis Show, Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and FM 92.7. We cover local economy and the free market, and here in Chattanooga and beyond, we even as far away as Dunlap, Tennessee, we cover the free market. And I argue that you should love your neighbor as yourself, because if we have that personal sense, we borrow from Christianity. If we're not Christians, we can borrow from Christianity and have a more personalistic, a more personal view of reality and of other people. I think the further we get away from Christianity and the Lord Jesus, the further away from that system of life and thought we go, the more likely we will be to have an impersonal, alienating, and in the end catatonic state of mind, one that is a form of insanity, and that will bring about many evil things, such as that which impelled Eric Klebold and his friend to gun down innocent people at Columbine High School, the school that was a model for modern human management, which is, of course, what schooling is all about. Schooling is not about education at all. It's not about character. It's about making people to be proper subjects, proper borrowers and consumers and employees. That's what schooling is all about. It has been that plan for the lower classes for ages, since the 1780s and 1790s, when the German philosophers such as Wundt we're talking about how to manage people and how to get them to be compliant. And yet the problem with schooling is that it has raised people's expectations so that you can do anything you want and so on. These are just lies peddled by a pedagogue. A pedagogue, John Taylor Gatto reminds me, is a Roman slave in the Roman Empire times who had charge of a young person or young people, and his goal was to force that young person to do what he was told, to write what he was told, to memorize what he was told, not to teach him anything, but just to enforce the doing of it, so that there could be separated out the obedient from the non-compliant. The non-compliant, today we call them stupid, right? We call them defective. But those are probably the people who have the best option, who just can't take it anymore, who just cannot take it anymore. And in the modern age of sort of state-induced insanity and incoherence, we have the mass murderer, Eric Klebold, for example. Now, the question is that I posed yesterday night at the Trail Life USA chapter meeting was this: to these boys before me, a dozen boys or so, and their dads lounging behind them, arms folded, waiting to see what the man who takes too long would have to say to their sons. Why bring up Samson at all? Samson in the Bible was a man of fleshly lust. He was a man who was a whoremonger. He was a man who in God's decree, married and wanted to marry a Philistine. In those days, the Philistines were the enemy of the children of Israel, and in that time, they were oppressors of very lax children of Israel who had kind of rejected God and gone their own way, and whom were made subject to the Philistines. What is a Philistine today? A Philistine today is someone who has really bad taste in art. I guess that's one definition. A Philistine is someone who is a boor, a wretch, self-centered, a man who is really insensitive, thinking always about himself, always concerned about money and status. That's the Philistine. Okay, and so in the times of Israel, the Philistines were armed men, and Samson, as we hear about Samson at the time of his birth, he was ordained to begin to free Israel from the bondage, and he was in the interregnum between the patriarchs, Joshua, the last of them, the early patriarchs, and the kings. Right, there was a period of the judges, and his story is found in the Judges. And so I asked the boys, I said, if you could destroy the enemy by a bold act, and the act would kill 20 of them, but your life would be consumed with their destruction, would you do it, or would you not? They seem to say no. And then I said, well, what about if there were maybe 100 enemy that you could kill with one movement that would also take your own life? Would you do it then? Well, they saw what I was suggesting. And then I said, well, what if there were 1,000? And I think they said, well, maybe I could be brave enough to die in the doing and to take the 1,000 enemy with me. Well, in the story about Samson, he kills by an act that's not a suicide and not a murder, according to Matthew Henry's commentary, in bringing down the temple of Dagon, where he was made part of a kind of a circus, a kind of worship celebration that the Philistines had for their god Dagon, small g, and he was part of the fun because they had conquered him, they had vanquished him, he who had multiplied the dead of that race. Those were the people who occupied the shores of the Mediterranean, which was then called Gaza, and is now called Gaza as well. That was Philistine territory. Now, Samson was a man of the flesh. How could I say? In answering that question about Samson's death, they saw that, well, Samson was in his death truly a great one. I pointed out to him that even though he was a great sinner, he was listed in Paul's St. Paul's account of the men of faith, and in one of those passages that kind of lumps a bunch of them together without giving any detail, where Paul in Hebrews chapter 11 says, and if I had more time, I could tell you about Jephthah and Samson. I'm not sure the other ones were, but Samson is in that list. So if he'd had time, he would have had something to say about Samson being a godly man in faith. And God used Samson despite his vices. His vice was for sex. He was a highly sexed man and a very powerful man. He was the one, if you remember from you might listen to Sunday school days, if you went to church more often, or if you started going to church again, you would hear perhaps about Samson as a hero, one I held up to these boys as an example. And he in the end, he was selfless, because as he stretched his arms out in the same way that Christ's arms were stretched out on the cross, he stretched his arms out against the pillars holding up that temple, in which there were 3,000 women and men of the Philistines, the great leaders, right? The chieftains of that people in that pagan temple. And they all perished. And the word says he killed as many in his death of the enemy as he had in his life. And he was a man of great exploits, great military exploits, killing 1,000 Philistine warriors with the jawbone of an ass. And of course, very humiliating to think that you, a warrior, are killed by a barehanded man with no armor and parts of a carcass. But he was a great destroyer of the enemy, and he had great strength. His strength came from, you remember now? You remember, right? He had great strength because as a Nazarite, he had very long hair. And the hair was not just ordinary hair. It was hair that was given to him as a special benefit, a special blessing, as part of that holy man vow. No, he could not drink alcohol. His mother could not drink alcohol, wine, or spirits in bearing him. But he was a man given to the flesh. And God used him. Matthew Henry says, God left him to himself to do foolish things, to punish him for indulging himself in lusts of uncleanness. And here he is, think of his head on the lap of Delilah. Remember Delilah, the temptress, right? She was a woman of loose morals and was tempting him. And she wanted to know how she could bind him. And she pestered him as he made love to her, right? He had sexual relations with her probably repeatedly for his own pleasure. And a man of God, right? A Christian. Notice how the Bible always tells the truth about great holy men who are God's favorites, but whose vices are not hidden away, right? There are no hagiographies in the Bible. The great ones, King David, for example, the ancestor of our Lord Jesus, his adulteries, his murders, exposed by the press, right? The Bible acting as the press of that day. You know, we get the idea of the press from the Israelites. We get it from the Reformation. Matthew Henry says, she made him sleep upon her knees, see the fatal consequences of security, right? Security in Christendom is a dangerous thing, because then you are satisfied with yourself. You're satisfied with what you have, and you're standing before God. In fact, you don't care about it. You're standing before God at all. He goes on to say, Satan ruins men by rocking them asleep, flattering them into a good opinion of their own safety. And so bringing them to mind nothing and fear nothing. And then he robs them of their strength and honor and leads them captive at his will. When he was asleep, she had a person ready to cut off his hair, which he did so silently and so quickly that it did not awake him. Many have lost the favorable presence of God, he says, and are not aware of it. They have provoked God to withdraw from them. They are not sensible of their loss. And so the Philistines take him. They take him when God had departed from him. If we sleep in the lap of our lusts, he says, Matthew Henry, we shall certainly wake in the hands of the Philistines. It is probable they had promised Delilah not to kill him. And the end of his life now is he's bound by fetters, and he grinds in the prison. He's grinding in the servitude. With purely ordinary manly strength, not the great strength of the warrior, the liberator of his people. Right? He did not have that strength, but his hair, meanwhile, was slowly growing back. The strength that he lost by sin, you could say, like a true penitent, he recovers by prayer. And that is the prayer that he utters at the very end, where he asks a boy to, since he's blinded, he's been blinded, they figured they would blind him so he may have great strength coming back to him, but he could not find his way. So he asks a boy to let him lean against the pillars of the temple as they make a demonstration of him, have their laugh, their guffaws. The Philistines have their guffaws at his expense in that temple, and so here's this man who's gained his strength back. He's blinded, and so he wants to glorify God. And there's a prayer at the very end. He says, "O Lord God, remember me, I pray. Strengthen me, I pray, just this once, O God, that I may with one blow take vengeance on the Philistines." Now here, Christ. He took vengeance. Christ defeated his enemies not for vengeance, but for love of his people. Here, a much lesser version of Christ, we have Samson, the fleshly man, and he has a low reason for vengeance, not for God's glory. He's a hero, but his end is not for God's glory, but to take vengeance on the Philistine for my two eyes. You see, that's a very lower reason, and yet he's still held up by St. Paul and as a hero of the faith. So here I am talking with these boys, and what do I say? Well, maybe the answers were kind of pat, and my son, who wants to kind of shepherd me in dealing with these boys and not talk over them too much. That's my problem, right? I talk over the boys to the dads almost, and my son kind of approved this topic, and so I was afraid that I would get from him the 14-year-old suggestions that were just too pat, right? Answers and explanations about this story of the death of Samson that were just too facile, too easy. But I don't think I fell into the pat answer. Well, just be prayerful, right? Be courageous. I didn't say that. I just kind of let the story sink in as these boys had remembered having heard it before, and I avoided the facile pat answer. Samson may very well be justified and brought in not guilty of any sinful murder, either of himself or the Philistines. So he didn't murder anybody, and he didn't commit felo de se, which is self murder. It was not his own life that he aimed at. God was glorified in pardoning Samson's great transgressions, of which this was an evidence. Christ was plainly typified in his death, holding out his hands as he did. So there's a picture in his death of Christ, of the arms extended, leaning in his case on the wall of the temple, a man unclean, and taking vengeance on the enemies of God's people. And I offer that because I want my listeners in that event yesterday evening after dinner to think of self-sacrifice, where if you are fighting the enemy, but you shall perish too. So whether it's 3,000 or whether it's 20, shall you count yourself too valuable to destroy 20 of the enemy? See, that is the spirit, I think, of Christianity. It is, Christianity has not come to bring peace on the earth. Okay, it has come to bring peace of the general institutional and structural sort, but it brings division, it brings warfare, it brings struggle, it brings conflict, it brings, you might say, the struggle over the antithesis, the struggle over black and white, right? Left and right, of good and evil, of the goats and the sheep, the wheat and the tares. That's what Christianity is about. Many of the parables, in fact, just remind of that simple point, that the gospel is about conflict. Now, the question is, on the National Day of Prayer today, where there is an event this evening at 6 p.m. at Chattanooga Christian School, Pray Chattanooga. The question is, in the nature of the struggle, is there a real struggle, and where is that struggle taking place? My argument here at Nooga Radio is that the struggle of Christendom is not just personal. It has to be personal. There has to be the individual prayer, the individual repentance, sorrow for sin. When Samson left the whore at midnight, remember he slept with the whore, but he roused himself at night to leave. And his enemies had thought they had boxed him in the city, but he carried off the door of the city. He had some awareness. He did not spend the morning with her. Perhaps we would like to think, perhaps he was sorrowful for his lusts and his exercising his lusts on this woman. And so he left and he took the door of the city with him. There was a conscience, there was a moral awareness that he had gone against the law of God in many ways, this saint, right, who in the end perishes. But there is conflict in Christianity. Is it personal? Yes. Must it go beyond that? And the answer there is no. Now, the no answer comes from many, many Christian people whom you know yourself. And they say, well, David Tulis at Nooga Radio, he has some fine things to say, but he's just very worldly. He's just worldly. He talks about penal reform all the time. He talks about stopping police abuse. He talks about constitutional government. He thinks somehow that those things are important. Don't you know that the end is here? Christ is coming back. Don't you know that? Why would you care about polishing the railings, polishing the deck chairs on a sinking ship? That is the theory of many Christians, and that has made them impotent. They think that the only thing that matters is the individual helping to convert another individual by telling the good word of Jesus, bringing individual souls into the kingdom. And that's it. There's nothing more. But the Great Commission really, on this day of prayer, is beyond that. It talks about penal reform. Even the ACLU is talking about penal reform. If the ACLU is talking about it in the question of expungement, which I hope to talk about in just a minute, then should not Christians be talking about court reform? Should not we be saying, well, we have godly men in our church. We can hold a court. We can solve a dispute between two members of our church. Well, actually, one member of our church and a man in the Catholic Church, the other church across the way, and they're having a business fight. And we've heard about it, and we want to settle that issue. We're going to use the Bible as our standard. Okay, that's what we're going to do. We've been made wise by the Word of God. Should they not be able to say? And so we will render a verdict in that business dispute where you have a broken promise and a missed shipment and a lost client, things like that. I would suggest that, yes, Christianity does propose that. And the whole idea of local economy says that very thing, local economy. Let's make things happen here. Do we have to rely on changes in law out of Nashville? Do we have to rely on changes brought by the good people in the Congress in Washington? I would say, well, no, we don't need them. All they can do is hurt us, right? All they can do is bog us down. All they can do is distract us. That's why I can hardly ever get time to talk about Donald Trump. Why? Because the solutions are not with the problems that he's addressing, right? They're not. The solutions to our problems in Chattanooga, to the problems of injustice, or say to the problems of dehumanizing schooling, the warehouse school problem. These are problems that are here. We can solve them ourselves. You, my listener, and your family. You and your wife, right? You and your neighbor. You and the man who's your partner in your business. You and your banker. You and your neighbor. You by rendering aid to that single mom who lives a couple houses down from you on the corner there under that half-dead oak tree, who hasn't had an oil change for her car in 57,000 miles, and she doesn't even know it. And it smokes when she starts it, and it's backfired once. earlier this week, when she passed your house and it went off and you thought it was a gunshot, but it was just her driving down to the next stop sign. You know she needs some help. She's got some children and she's got a couple of jobs, and you don't even know her name. Well, why not? Don't you know she needs help? Don't you know that she needs a little grace from you? That's welfare reform right there. Okay? That is welfare reform. We don't need to have Congress cut or add money to the budget. Okay, that's irrelevant. Whatever they do up there is irrelevant to us here in Chattanooga. We have to come up with the solutions ourselves. Penal reform, let's figure it out ourselves. Let's do something here. Let's get people not pleading guilty. Let's start by making everybody say not guilty. I want to be indicted. Okay, that's what we have to have. Waive the court. Have people go for trial. That is part of the solution. This is David Tulis, Nooga Radio 92.7.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Nooga Radio AM 1240 and 92.7 FM News Now. Christopher Wilson and Patricia DeSalvo have been arrested in East Ridge after a search of Mr. Wilson's home, which he consented to, revealed methamphetamine and pipes for smoking it and $14,000 in cash. Ms. DeSalvo was arrested after methamphetamine was found on her person, according to the police, which violates her probation. A man wanted in connection with a first-degree murder in Polk County has been arrested in Bradley County. Daniel Stinnett, who's 49, arrested in a house on Corwin Road, and the police say they found a weapon they believe is the murder weapon. Stinnett will be transferred from Bradley County to Polk County. Police say Eric Spangler burglarized 2 homes on 2 different occasions back in 2016 and managed to pawn the items from the thefts within 90 minutes of having stolen them. A new surveillance video is how the police caught him. The police say he appears in a pawned surveillance video pawning the items stolen. Trinity Quinn went missing from Ray County on Tuesday at 7 a.m. The police say she may be with Daniel Clark, who's wanted in connection with a murder in Nashville. If it's going on in the Tennessee Valley, it's going on. Nooga Radio AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
After this cool start, expect warmer weather for your Wednesday with lots of sunshine. Very nice highs, lower 80s. Tonight, more clouds, much milder lows, 58 to 60. Breezy with scattered showers and storms Thursday, highs 68 to 70. Much cooler highs into the 50s with lingering showers Friday. Bring life back to your lawn and garden with Glass Farm Nursery, featuring lots of color, from flats and hang baskets to shrubs and trees. Open daily, closed Sundays. Glass Farm Highway 11, 4 miles south of Trenton. And I'm Sports Team 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Core.
On Nooga Radio AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
I have the best steak selection in town. The name of the business is Don's Meat Shop, and I'm Donnie Raines. Just ask for Donnie. I make over 20 different types of sausages. Most of them are great for grilling. We have the best selection, best quality. We have the hard-to-find items. Don's Meat Shop.
Window Depot of Chattanooga. They're locally owned and operated and been around since 2008, installing top-quality vinyl replacement windows. You get the best price and service in the area. Top-quality double pane, energy-efficient windows. They look great and save you money.
Oh, I love to save money.
You'll also save money on your heating and cooling costs. Call 894-0011. 894-0011. WindowDepotChattanooga.com. WindowDepotChattanooga.com. Sales and installation professionals. You'll get a fantastic job while helping to enhance the value, appearance, comfort, and efficiency of your most valuable asset, your home. Other window providers? No way. Window Depot Chattanooga's windows qualify for the TVA rebate. Sliding doors, gutters, soffits, fascia, garage doors, and other home improvements. If you want to save a ton, call 894-0011. WindowDepotChattanooga.com. WindowDepotChattanooga.com. Window Depot of Chattanooga. Sales and installation professionals.
And now to our reporter in the field.
We asked Ray at Ray's Plumbing what's important for homeowners to know.
Some field line systems can cost upwards of $10,000. The bottom line is to save yourself money down the road. I would definitely recommend everybody with a septic that is not on county or city sewer to have an inspection done by a qualified professional. It'd be great if nobody did inspections on them for all plumbing companies. That's what we do to make a living. Not to scare anyone, but it should be in the back of your mind. The danger is the field lines failing and costing thousands upon thousands of dollars and tearing your yard up. By preventative maintenance, you're saving yourself a large headache that may displace yourself and your family. That happens more often than you think. The waste is designed to stay in the tank, and that waste will build up over time. Even with treatment, we have to help that waste break down. Ultimately, preventative maintenance is the key that will keep you from spending $5,000 to $10,000 on replacing your septic system. The bottom line is to save yourself money down the road.
Call Ray at Ray's Plumbing, 421-6341, 421-6341.
Need windows? Hey folks, do you need new windows? Good news. Window Depot of Chattanooga has a great special going on right now. 10 high-quality, energy-efficient, double-hung vinyl windows installed for only $29.90. That's right, 10 double-hung vinyl windows, only $2,990. And yes, they qualify for the TVA rebates. Call 894-0011. Window Depot of Chattanooga today, located at 5950 Shalford Road. Call 894-0011 today. Competent, kind, caring, knowledgeable, experienced, great listener, great negotiator, in touch, accessible. If these are the characteristics you want and need in a realtor, you want and need Thomas DeMoss of Keller Williams Realty. Thomas is a very gifted realtor who puts the client's needs first. Whether you're buying or selling a home, Thomas is the realtor of choice. Thomas will help and guide you through each step of this very important process. For many of us, the purchase of a home is one of our largest investments and most important family and financial decision. Let Thomas use his 10 years of experience in the Chattanooga real estate market to give you the advantage you need when buying or selling a home. Buying a house? Thomas can help you navigate the emotional and somewhat anxious process of buying a home. For those of you who want to sell a house, Thomas uses his marketing and negotiating experience to help you sell your home for top dollar. Thomas is a local resident raising his family here in Hamilton County. He knows the area very well. For many agents, real estate is a job. With Thomas DeMoss, it's a passion and what he loves to do. Call Thomas today for a no-obligation consultation. He makes the process as simple as possible. Call 423-364-0028 and visit his website, northriverpropertygroup.com.
Need a tiller to get things going for the spring? Spiff up your porch, maybe your deck? Come on by and get a pressure washer at Action Rental. Family in town, need some tables and chairs for an event? Come on by and see us, Action Rental. This is Dan at Action Rental on Lee Highway. Come by and see me. Action Rentals.
It is Eric Jones hard into the outside wall, and they are still 3 and 4 wide. It looks like we're racing at Talladega.
Caution flag is out. It looked like Denny Hamlin was trying to get by Ricky Stenhouse. Got into the back of Ricky at the line. Man, that's a close one. Matt Kenseth wins stage 1.
Green checkered flag is out, and Brad Keselowski has won stage 2.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. into the wall. That will bring out the caution. Caution waving once again. And again, it's Dale Earnhardt Jr. involved.
Oh, trouble. Ty Dillon has gotten turned to the inside of the racetrack, and Clint Boyer has just nailed him.
Matt Kenseth falling back, the field storming by. Something wrong. Now we see sparks from Kenseth's Toyota.
Larson chops him off. Coming off turn number 2. Nose to tail. Now it's Logano to the high side in 3.
Joey Logano, a winner here at the Richmond International Raceway.
Here at Live on Chattanooga's official NASCAR radio station.
Fox News Talk 1240. The voice of NASCAR.
I think we have the police videos on YouTube to thank for important developments in penal reform and justice reform, as police departments around the country, which last year killed 1,000 Americans or more, are under increasing pressure to demilitarize, to scale back. And in fact, the whole system of government, which they feed, law enforcement feeds a judicial industrial complex, a mechanism that is a kind of social management mechanism for the poor and the working classes. These systems are breaking. Their hatred against them is rising. Fear of police is rising. Their disregard is rising as well. And in Nashville, the libertarian group Beacon Center is joining with a progressive left-wing sort of group, the American Civil Liberties Union, with Hetty Weinberg at the top, and also joining with the Nashville Chamber of Commerce and Goodwill Industries of Tennessee to work on reform on several points. Now, these points from which we're going to hear Hannah Cox tell about, these points go away in the right direction, and that would be bringing mercy and justice into a system where often the only offended party is the state itself. The state is constantly the offended party, and real victims of real crime are entirely disregarded by the court system. There's no restitutionary system at all in place for victims of crime, and if there's a murder, well, it's not the dead man who really matters. It's the fact that the state's law has been violated, right? That's the state is looking out for the interest of its statute, not the individual man or woman who's dead on the floor. Now, Hannah Cox is the outreach coordinator of Beacon Center. And Hannah, tell me about about what I mentioned here, this coalition of 4 groups headquartered in Nashville and working with the legislature. What is afoot?
Well, we at the Beacon Center are new to the whole criminal justice reform issue. This is our first year that we've worked on it. And we started looking at, our main goals are to ensure that every Tennessean has the opportunity to become a productive member of society. What we found is that we have a very broken criminal justice system that has a lot of barriers in place that not only reduce the chances that someone coming out of jail can become a productive member of society again, access a good job again, but actually can lead to high rates of recidivism, which we've seen. So we have formed a bipartisan coalition with the ACLU, the National Chamber of Commerce, and Goodwill Industries as founding members. We'll be adding more groups to that as we go along. And we have put together a multi-year legislative agenda to try to push reforms that we think are necessary in our criminal justice system. And we're kind of targeting 6 key areas that we hope to reform. Number 1, we want to address public safety. Public safety should be the paramount concern of any criminal justice system. However, criminal law should be reserved for conduct that threatens public safety and not wielded to grow government and undermine economic freedom. We also want to focus on taxpayer protection. Criminal justice should be efficient and place as small a burden on taxpayers as possible while maintaining strong protections for public safety. In Tennessee, we're spending a lot of money on our criminal justice system, while we also have one of the highest incarceration rates in the country. So we're spending a lot of money, but it's not working right now. We also want to focus on prevention. We want to implement policies and evidence-based programs that address the root causes of crime and keep juveniles from entering the criminal justice system in the first place. We think that's critical to ensuring a better return on crime reduction dollars for Tennessee taxpayers. Fourthly, we want to look at workforce readiness. Most prisoners are going to return to their communities, and therefore in preparation, they need to receive educational opportunities such as high school equivalent degrees and also learn specific trades and skill sets. To promote reentry and prevent recidivism, we should provide educational and workplace readiness opportunities to encourage their full reintegration into society. To that end, we also want to look at reentry preparation. So a central goal should be to convert all released prisoners into taxpayers and productive members of society. The criminal justice system should emphasize public safety, personal responsibility, workforce readiness, restitution, community service, and treatment. So while in prison and during probation and parole, these should be focuses. Lastly, we want to focus on policies that will increase transparency and accountability within the system. As with any government program, the criminal justice system must be transparent and include performance measures that hold it accountable for its results in protecting the public, lowering crime rates, reducing reoffending, collecting victim restitution, and conserving taxpayers' money. So those are our long-term goals. Those are the things that we think need to be addressed and that we hope to affect change during the coming years. So we started off this session kind of tackling 3 key issues. And, we went to people who are working in the prisons, who are working with people who are reentering society. We really wanted to make sure that we were able to address the main barriers. So what are the first issues that people coming out of the criminal justice system encounter that lead to recidivism, that lead to people not being able to become productive members of society again? And the first thing we heard across the board, it was pretty astonishing to hear the just collective agreement on this issue, was driver's license reform. So currently in Tennessee, if you are someone who is being released back into society, you have 1 year to pay back all of your court fines and fees and restitution, and that can be thousands and thousands of dollars. Well, somebody who's coming out of prison, often they're leaving with the shirt on their back and whatever they had in their pockets. They often don't even have bus fare. They have to find a job. It can be very difficult to gain employment when you have a record. They have to find housing. It can be very difficult to obtain housing if you have a record. And they have to be able to drive back and forth to whatever job they can get.
Or travel.
If you're looking at Tennessee, we don't have very much public transportation, so it's essential that someone has a license to be able to work when they're coming out. Well, what happens currently is if someone comes out and they've been released and they're back in society for a year and they haven't been able to pay back these thousands of dollars, which, I think you and I could even say that would be difficult to do, even without coming out of prison, to pay back thousands of dollars all at once in 1 year. If they don't do that right now, up until this year, we took their license away. Would mean that they either could not get back and forth to their job in order to keep paying down what they owed, or they had to break the law and drive without a license. And so this was a huge barrier for people to be able to get back on their feet. So the first bill that we introduced this session, or that we advocated on behalf of rather, was something that would basically give them a longer amount of time to have to pay back their fees and to not have their license taken, and that would reduce the fees and fines that they have to pay to get it back. The second issue that we looked at was something called expungement reform. So for those who aren't familiar, people who have a certain category of crime, these are nonviolent crimes, these are lower level offenses, you have the opportunity to have your record expunged. And this is something that in talking to Goodwill Industries, which hires a lot of formerly incarcerated individuals, and with talking to the National Chamber of Commerce, who deals with a lot of businesses who are looking for employees, this is a huge barrier. You know, a lot of them have confines where they cannot hire someone with a record, and this is a huge barrier to getting a good job. A lot of the licensing requirements also have kind of side notes that say, oh, you can't have this license if you have a record. So expungement is something that says, okay, you've done your time, you have a lower level offense, you've paid back everything you owe, you know, you can have your record expunged. Well, the problem is that while that's available to people, it's very expensive. And the average person who is coming out of jail and just paying back all these fines and fees probably does not have the ability to go in and pay for these fines and fees to have the record expunged on top of that.
Which is how much? 400.
Kind of a long process,
how much money are we talking about?
Some of them are not very aware. So we've passed some bills this session that deal with those issues, trying to reduce fines and fees that people have to pay to have their record expunged, trying to make them more aware of the process being available to them, lower the age for juveniles to have their record expunged to 17. And so while these might sound like small steps, these are really integral into a person being able to just basically get back on their feet and try to become a productive member of society again. So we sort of tip off our policy agenda this year with those things, and we'll be working on other things in the coming years that we think are pretty essential. One of those being ensuring that juveniles are directed to treatment and rehabilitation programs versus the actual criminal justice system when they're first starting to encounter it. This way we make sure that they have the root issues of crime addressed and that they don't become, you know, more surrounded by hardened criminals to where they just become more and more professional criminals themselves. So
this is David Tulis, and we're talking with Hannah Cox.
I'm really excited about what we've been working on.
This is David Tulis. We're talking with Hannah Cox of Beacon Center. She's the outreach coordinator and telling us about some of the major reforms that are going to be that are being pushed now between the Beacon, or among the Beacon Center, the ACLU, the Goodwill, the Chamber of Commerce of Nashville, and Goodwill Industries, and other groups that will join, including driver license reform and expungement reform. In March, Hannah, the mayor of Memphis, Jim Strickland, paid. He had a little bit of ceremony, and he indicated that he had paid to have for 23 former felons to have expungements of at least part of their records, paying from a Memphis fund $450 per person. So that's what an expungement generally costs, right? If you don't have legal advice on top of that, it's about just under $500.
Correct.
Now, why is it, if you have an expungement, since I think that's something that my listener can grasp onto. If you have something that's expunged and you have a question, have you been convicted or have you pleaded guilty to a property crime on a job application or in court, right? If the record's been expunged, and though you were convicted of that or you did plead guilty to such an offense, you can truthfully and legally say what?
You can say that you've not been
that you can say no.
Crime. So you can truthfully say, you don't have a record. And this is a really big deal for people who are trying to obtain good jobs. And it's actually something that, when dealing with the Chamber of Commerce, we've heard from business owners and business leaders that they prefer it too. A lot of them say, I don't need to know about this. If someone has a felony on their record, then of course you want to know before you hire that person. But if someone has, a very small crime, if somebody got arrested for smoking marijuana or something really, minimal, a lot of employers just don't want to know that information. It's not something that affects the job. It's not something that affects the workforce. And they would just rather that not be on the record. But currently, if someone doesn't have the record expunged, they have to report that. And that can really hinder them from being able to obtain a good job. This is, like I said, just to reiterate, this is especially true when you're dealing with an occupation that's a trade, something that has an occupational license on it, which, I've been on the show before talking about the burden that occupational licensing places on our workforce and our economy in Tennessee. We're ranked 11th worst in the country for our occupational licensing burden. Over 111 professions in Tennessee currently require an occupational license, which is something that says you have to have a certain amount of education, you have to pay a certain amount of a fee to the government every year in order to work in this field. Well, not only is that a burden, but a lot of these occupational licenses bar people who have any criminal record from being able to work in those fields as well. So these are trades that someone could easily be learning to do while they're in jail, which goes into our, two of our goals, workforce readiness and reentry preparation. These are things that people could be learning to do in prison that they could come out and start working in and make a living in and be able to pay back their fines and fees by having that good job. But currently they're blocked because of this, requirement within the license. So having that expungement can enable them to then go pursue some of these trades and fields where they currently cannot.
Well, Hannah Cox, what is bringing about this movement for reform? This is all in the past year. This has come up. Now, I've been following these issues for several years, and I'd say in the past year, there's been this discussion, this buzz about the need for this. What can you attribute it, please?
Sure. Well, I'll tell you from our end, this is how we reach this, because we have, like I said, we've not worked on this issue before. This has not come up in our peripheral before. But what happened was we did a bit of research last year that we call the success sequence. And what we found was, we wanted to find out what keeps somebody out of poverty, because that's our goal. We have an anti-poverty agenda at the Beacon Center. We want to ensure that people are able to pursue their American dream and become a productive member of society. And we found there were three things that kept people out of poverty. And those were access to a good education, access to an intact family unit, and access to a good job. Well, when we really started looking at two of those components, which were access to an intact family and access to a good job, one of the main barriers that prevented people from accessing those two things was the criminal justice system. And that's detrimental, because we found that somebody who has access to all of those three things has a 96% chance of never seeing poverty. But if you lose one of those components, it drops to an 80% chance. You lose two, it drops to about a 30% chance. And if you don't have any of those three, then there's almost a guarantee that you're going to be in poverty. What we've seen is a lot of people are diverted into the criminal justice system for nonviolent offenses, for things that maybe could be better treated through rehabilitation, treatment, or community-based programs. And what that does is it divides up the family, and it takes parents out of the home. And then that becomes a cycle, because we see that children who have a parent in prison are much more likely to end up in prison themselves. Also, access to a good job, as I just went through. The criminal justice system frequently prevents somebody from being able to access a good job when they come out. So once we realized that, we decided that we had to tackle this issue. And what we found was that the picture in Tennessee was pretty dire. We have an incarceration rate that is 11% higher than the national average. We spend $900 million on incarceration annually, yet our crime rate is about 30% higher than the national average. And actually, when we looked at the data, our incarceration rate in the state increased 256% between 1981 and 2013, yet our violent crime rate remains among the highest in the nation. So what that said to us is we're spending a lot of money for something that's ineffective. And this is a major concern, because that means we're wasting a lot of taxpayer money, while we're also have a public that is not safe, that isn't protected. And these are dire issues that we had to get involved with. And once we realized that, I think for a long time, many conservatives and people on the right and libertarians didn't necessarily see criminal justice reform as their issue. But it really is an issue for everyone. There's real, reasons that everybody on every side of the aisle can care about this and should be passionate about reform. And we decided that in order to affect real change on this issue, there needed to be bipartisan consensus. And so we had worked with the ACLU a little bit previously on civil asset forfeiture reform in the state, and had realized during the course of that we don't have a ton in common, but we do have some things in common. And where we do have commonality, we should come together and try to push for real reforms in the state.
Can you tell my listener?
We opened up this conversation with them and decided, that we wanted people on both sides of the aisle. And then we also decided that we wanted to talk to people who were actually providing the jobs in the society as well.
Can you tell my listener what happened to civil asset forfeiture?
Added.
Hannah, can you tell my listener what happened this year to civil asset forfeiture bill? Where is that?
I can't actually. I'm not sure. We were not working on that this year. That was not in our policy agenda, so I'm not up to speed on that.
Let me ask you also another question before I lose you here to the ticking of the clock. Where is the demilitarization of police as a reform in the thinking of the people at Beacon Center? How high is that, or how low is that as a priority? The demilitarization
that is
of
actually
police
not
departments.
Included in our coalition's agenda. Not to say that that's not important to people within the coalition, but this is something where we had to come together and figure out issues that all parties agreed on, and that we really thought that we could be able to work on in our wheelhouse and affect change on it. So those issues, as I said, were public safety, taxpayer protection, prevention, and reentry. And those are the issues that we wanted to workforce readiness, reentry preparation, and accountability and transparency. So we're really working on that end, and we'll have to leave the other to other people because there's only so much list there.
That's right. Well, listen, Hannah Cox of Beacon Center, thanks for joining my listener and me here at AM 1240 and FM 92.7 Nooga Radio. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Hannah Cox is from Beacon Center, the libertarian-oriented group in Nashville, which is in league with the Chamber of Commerce of Nashville and Goodwill Industries of Tennessee and the left-wing, progressive, statist-oriented ACLU, and they're looking at important reforms in the statute, legislative reforms. Also, Beacon has a legal arm that is fighting the abuse of the idea of cartels, state-run cartels, state-run monopolies and privileges that harass innocent people making livings by demanding that they submit their whole profession to licensure by an industry incumbent committee ordained by the state to control that particular profession. We are a very bad state for the states claiming ownership of entire professions. That has to be pared back by litigation. And Braden Busek, the leading litigator at Beacon Center, is working on at least a couple of cases. One with horse masseuses, and another with Airbnb and the right of people to use their property, their personal houses, for to generate their own incomes as they will freely. And that is something he's leading litigation against the city of Nashville. Again, to defend and expand liberty. We are here at Nooga Radio, and our goal is the free market. We want there to be freedom and liberty, and it can only happen. The main interrupting force is the state itself. The state itself and high-minded officials who think that they own things and that they can act. Often, officials act outside of legal authority. That is a grave problem by officials. And so, if you, my listener, are ever charged or accused by an official for not filling out a piece of paper or not doing something or not getting a permission. Now, you can also call McCoon Law Firm for aid, but always check things yourself. See what the statute says. See what the agency regulations say. Many times, the authority acts outside. He acts without proper authority, making a demand upon you. So you just simply have to make sure nothing is done orally. It's all done in writing. And just say you don't understand his claims and ask him to explain them to you in writing. That's the best way to do it. Just get these people to explain their authority. Just say you just don't quite get it. Can you please explain further? And pin them down, right? Pin them down, and you'll find that probably 80% of the time it is just made up. It's just completely made up claims against you, my listener here at AM 1240. And FM 92.7 Nooga Radio. Defend yourself. Use your eyes and read what the law is. The authority is the law. Now, often that law is abusive and wrong and needs to be overturned by litigation or by legislative action. And there we count on you as voter and as possibly future potential activists to bring about major reforms in view. We need to think about making the judicial industrial complex much smaller than it is, and ending the whole program of militarized law enforcement against the common people of our state. This is David Tulis, defending local economy and the free market here in Chattanooga and beyond. Now, I've got a great program just ahead, Legal Bites with Jim McCoon, but first, some important announcements.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
I did a customer at